Chapter 1. Hundreds of icy missiles buzzed overhead. I was stuck in the middle. Pow, pow, pow. The snowballs pelted my back and legs, stinging like crazy. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, thwack! One smacked me right in the ear. "Headshot! 1,000 points!" shouted Jackson in his scratchy voice. I dropped to my knees and hunched over. A cold slug of ice slid down my neck. Snowballs thumped all around me in the thin layer of snow. With soggy grenades flying in all directions, I didn't dare look up. The school's intercom crackled, and Principal Kirkland's voice boomed across the field. "Students are reminded that throwing snowballs is strictly forbidden. Enjoy the snow." For a heartbeat, the snowballs stopped. I had a quick look around. Over by the forest, Jackson and Maddie froze mid-scoop. Their friends paused too. On the opposite side of the schoolyard, near the fence, was another pack of kids holding their snowballs in the air. I could see Coco and Lucas rolling a huge snowball up to them. What were they doing? Making a snowman? Didn't they realize we were in the middle of a full-scale battle? "We're not throwing snowballs," yelled Jackson at the school. He was always hoarse, like he'd been cheering at a championship hockey game the night before. "We're throwing ice balls." I ducked my head as a battery of snowballs winged into the sky. Whack, whack, whack. 3 of them nailed me right in the back. I had to get out of here. I started to crawl on hands and knees towards Lucas and Coco. They were the only ones definitely not attacking me. Bam! It seemed my backside was an especially popular target. Then I caught one across the top of my head. My toque went flying. That was it. I was done. I spread out on the ground, closed my eyes, and covered my head with my arms as best I could. Suddenly, someone grabbed my hands. I kept my eyes closed, too terrified to open them or try to fight back. They started dragging me across the snow. I felt my pants sliding down, the snow scraping my bare belly like burning hot coals. I was sure that any second now they'd slide all the way down, and then I would die of fatal embarrassment. They stopped, rolled me over. A purple toque with 2 big brown eyes peered down. "Henry, are you okay?" It was Coco. I blinked. Lucas leaned over me too, grinning. "Man, you got pasted out there." With his pointy nose, huge front teeth, and giant smile, he kind of reminded me of a cheerful beaver. He handed me my toque, and I stuffed it back down over my head and ears. "Keep your head down," he warned. I sat up and realized the mini ice bombs weren't hammering us anymore. That was because we were hidden behind the big snowball. Coco and Lucas weren't making a snowman. They were building a snow fort. What I didn't know yet was that eventually it would become a gigantic snow fort, and that someday it would protect us from things much worse than ice balls. We were all wet and red-faced, and the classroom windows were steaming up. Our teacher, Mrs. Zink, made us go sit on the carpet on the colored squares. I avoided sitting near Jackson and Maddie and found a spot next to Coco. We were too old for the carpet. That was for the kindies. But here we were. All my thoughts were being sucked down to my butt, and the only thing I could think of was how much it hurt. I leaned from one cheek to the other, trying to relieve the pain. "Henry, stop leaning on Coco," said Mrs. Zink. "Remember rule number 3, keep your hands to yourself." "I wasn't touching Coco with my hands," I said. "It's true," said Coco. "He touched me with his shoulder." "That's beside the point," said Mrs. Zink. "Coco's not going to be able to concentrate with you shoulder checking her." "I don't mind," Coco said. Ever since I moved here in September, Coco is the only one who has always been nice to me." "Thanks, Coco," I said. "My butt was getting pins and needles from all this carpet time." She laughed. "You crack me up, Henry." Mrs. Zink shot me her laser beam look of fire and said, "Henry, do not touch Coco at all. Perhaps if you can't sit still, you would rather go to the principal's office?" Jackson and all his friends said, "Ah!" and started to snicker. I stared out the window at the chunky snowflakes that were still falling. They made me feel like I was floating, happy and light. When we lived in Victoria, back on Vancouver Island, it almost never snowed. Mom said it was because the ocean created a temperate effect. That's why she had to cut the grass in January and why I had never built a snowman. Every year from November through March, I would wake up hoping it had snowed in the night. I'd roll out of bed, hold my breath, and creep toward my window, and then I would see it. Moss green, apple green, grass green, sea green. People talk about getting the blues when they get sad. I got the greens. But now we live in a mountain town. I wish we'd lived here my whole life. My new home has a forest out the back door, bike trails everywhere, and only one big road through the middle of the valley. But now we live in this mountain town. I wish we'd lived here my whole life. My new home has a forest out the back door, bike trails everywhere, and only one big road through the middle of the valley, and a whole lot of snow. "Yes or no, Henry?" asked Mrs. Zink. "Yes!" I shouted. The class laughed. I had no idea what she was talking about. "Are you sure?" "No!" Mrs. Zink looked out the window. She smiled at me like she'd read my mind. "Try to hang in there, Henry. It will be lunchtime before you know it, and then you can go outside again." "I don't know if I'm going to make it." Coco giggled. "I have confidence that you can do it," said Mrs. Zink. "But right now, I need you to pay attention." "Yeah," said Jackson. I swung to my right. "Henry," said Mrs. Zink, "take a deep breath. Focus. We can do this." She gave me 2 thumbs up and tipped her head at me like she was beaming me a secret telepathic message. I had no idea what she was thinking. I nodded as if I had received her signal. Then I took a deep breath and held on to it, hoping the bell would ring before I exploded. If you enjoyed this chapter, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. And you can order My Best Friend is Extinct from your favorite indie bookstore or from orcabook.com.